with my dad actually, and hadn't been to the races for a while. And we're watching the Porsches, the Carrera Cup, and I said to Dad at the time, I'm like, that looks like a bit of fun. We should get one of those. And he's like, oh, here we go. It's not a matter of going and winning every round. It's a matter of walking away from that round with some good points to just consolidate the way of us spending time together as a family and as one unit.
Finally wins a Carrera Cup Australia rounds. His first, having already scored 14 trophies before, he finally gets the one he wanted.
G'day everyone, Brendan Green here. Just thought I'd give you an update on that last message we sent out. In that message, we were talking about Hubby's involvement over the last handful of years in the Carrera Cup, and more particularly our involvement with the TekworkX Motorsport team. So as I suggested, we've got the man behind the brand TekworkX, Rob Woods. Welcome, Woodsy.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate it.
Good to have you here. Just thought, just to bring you into the storyline. You know, obviously a lot of people have seen our involvement with TekworkX over the last couple of years, and we just thought it'd be a really good way to give people a bit of an understanding of how our partnerships evolved. But before we did that, sort of go back to how it was that a bloke who's been in business for himself in the commercial fit-out space has landed himself in the whole place of owning a race team. So how'd you get into it in the first place, mate? What was your tie to motorsport?
Obviously, as a kid, I always followed motorsport and what have you, and I would have been probably in my late 20s, early 30s, and I actually said to my wife that I wanted to start going ute racing. So I'm like, oh, this looks like good fun. She said, don't be silly, you're not doing that. And I said, okay, fair enough. So we squashed that idea, and then it would have been 10 years later. And I was just at Sydney Motorsport Park, and I was there with my dad actually, and hadn't been to the races for a while. And we're watching the Porsches in Carrera Cup, and I said to Dad at the time, I'm like, that looks like a bit of fun. We should get one of those. And he's like, oh, here we go. And I think maybe 2 months later, I bought one.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, just did a few track days and had no experience and just learned how to drive a race car, and just went off racing on my own. You know, well, not on my own, with another team that was based in Sydney, where I was originally from. And then we just went from there and raced a few seasons of Porsche Sprint Challenge, and that's how it's progressed.
So Carrera Cup is obviously the pinnacle of the Porsche motor racing. So sitting beneath that, you mentioned Sprint Challenge. You had another run last weekend, just interestingly. How long between last time being in the car and the last meet at the Bend?
I haven't raced for over 2 years.
Yeah, right, okay.
Over 2 years. I hadn't been in a cup car or the previous generation car for probably, and like talking properly, I've done a few little laps here and there when the boys are testing, but I hadn't probably done anything for 18 months. So, yeah, it was a bit of an experience, I'll call it.
Yeah, there you go. That's a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Mate, you talk about going out to Sydney Motorsport Park. You see a Porsche, buy a Porsche, race a Porsche. It's a pretty quick succession from an idea. Obviously, you thought about racing before with the utes, as you said. So how many years were you in Sprint Challenge before the emergence of the idea of starting a team?
It came from, like, obviously I ran with a team in Sydney, and the guy that ran the team, Garth, he pretty much coached me, taught me everything. I did everything with him. And then obviously as a family, we planned on moving to the Gold Coast. And I sort of looked at it at the time, well, what about if I just set up a small team basically for myself? And obviously my daughter Zoe races, and she was, you know, at that stage about 16 years old. She'd done a little bit of karting, and it was more so just for the two of us, and it just evolved probably quite quickly.
So was that where TekworkX started, just the two of you, or did TekworkX become something bigger a little bit later? How did that all sort of pan out?
Yeah, basically it started just the two of us, and from there we met obviously obviously I had a mechanic straight away. I had interactions with a lot of guys that had worked on cars in Sydney, and then they lived on the Gold Coast now. And then we just evolved from that. And then obviously I met Luke at the time, Yulden, and then we went from there. He was driver coaching Zoe, my daughter, and we just progressed there. And then it was basically 12 months after that, we just decided that we go racing in Carrera Cup. We had a Carrera Cup car sitting in the workshop that I owned, and that's how we went. And I think from memory, when I look back at that, it was the year of COVID. So
Yeah,
it
right.
was cut quite short.
Yeah, well, people have obviously asked, how do we get involved? What's the connection to TekworkX? And the initial introduction was, obviously was, pretty good mates with Luke, myself, and I'd been doing the Targa stuff with Porsche, and it was his conversation. I think we're at Targa High Country down in Victoria, and he said, I'm racing Carrera Cup with this mob TekworkX. I reckon you and Robert get along pretty well. Why don't you have a look at getting involved? I think our first year was 2021, and we just did a little bit of a smaller sponsorship. And it was after that in 2022 that we did the full naming rights and got right behind it. There's a picture of the car behind me there and the screen, which was great fun. We certainly loved it. It was a start to what I've seen has been a good, enjoyable partnership. So advancing into Carrera Cup, mate, you've obviously it's a whole different beast when you've gone from you and Zoe and a small team and a mechanic to bringing in a pro driver, extending into multiple cars. At Carrera Cup, you're bringing engineers in, you're flying teams around the country. You've got transporters. It's a huge difference from a small little dad and daughter to something bigger. So how did that become what it became so quickly?
It's probably just the experience of racing and having the right people around you that you need to actually, if you want to be competitive, you've actually got to progress. So you can't sort of sit there and go, okay, I'll do that with these amount of people and try and do it, because you're competing against like some very professional teams like in Carrera Cup that have been doing it for a long time. And like for us to walk into it, and we did it the hard way for the first 12 months, 2 years, because obviously they have all the infrastructure, what have you, behind them. And we had to sort of, it was a large outlay to get where we need to get to. But it was something that I was prepared to do, basically because I enjoyed it so much. It's a family thing for my family. Actually, you've met my wife, Astrid, the girls, Zoe and Rochelle. And for us, it was a family thing. And it was a way of us spending time together as a family and as one unit. And obviously then everyone else that's around us, as in whether it's mechanics, it's truck drivers, everyone's part of what we call the TekworkX family. And everyone's treated that way. And, obviously, like with yourself, 12 months ago or 18 months ago, we spoke and I said, just come up here. We're doing this day. We're doing a launch day. You came and we had a day at Norwell and things like that. And for us, it's sort of like once you sort of become part of us, you stay with us until you decide you want to go. So, it's good. It has its challenging moments. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I was going to come into that. I think you might have answered one of the other things I was going to say, and that is, what is the greatest satisfaction that you feel with having progressed the team to where it is now and being competitive?
Yeah, I think obviously, we all have a competitive streak in us, some more than others. My whole life, I just don't like losing. And that's probably been the hardest part because you'll get probably more lows in motorsport than highs. And that's why you've got to appreciate the highs when they're there and savor them. But, you digress back to that. It's just having that team with you.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. And a bit of a segue into what's the worst of owning a race team as well. But before I throw to you, I mean, I can't imagine what that would be like, because I've been there when, as a major sponsor, without the stake that you've got in it. And I get the shits horribly when, who we're back and has a bad, if someone bins it or misses the start or whatever, I'm like, it's the worst thing that's ever happened. So when one of the boys bins it and you've got the mechanics working all through the night, I can't imagine what the worst bit of owning a race team is, but I'm sure you'll share it with us. Yeah,
and even like to progress back to the good times, like when we decided to go fully fledged into Carrera Cup in 22, I think it was, 22, when the 992 came out, and we had Luke full-time driving. We had Max Vidot come to us, who I'd raced against Max in Sprint Challenge, and it was just the highs of, the first round we went to in Carrera Cup, we won the round at the Grand Prix with Max. Luke was fastest in practice one. Like, it was just, how did we do this? How did it happen? It's all happening so fast, but you soon then get back to the bad parts about it, or not the bad parts, the disappointments. And you'll have them. You will go to the next round like we did that year at Darwin, and we just go backwards, and you're just like, what have we done different here now? And we haven't done anything different. It's just how it rolls. There's times where the boys will, if the boys, they'll have an incident where they crash the car or they get hit or something like that, and the boys will work. They'll work all night, these guys, because, most of them, all of them, they don't do it for money. They're not on hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're just dedicated. They love motorsport. They love winning. A lot of them are ex-racers, or they've raced karts, or they've done something. So they've got that competitive streak in them as well. But, I've seen our guys work all night. They'll get no sleep, or they might get an hour's sleep. But the look on their face when the driver goes out there and performs, it's priceless.
Yeah, well, I mean, being over in New Zealand when we had the race win and the round win only a couple of weeks ago, you can just see how ecstatic the team are when that result sort of comes through from, it doesn't matter whether it's, Rochelle as the team manager, whether it's Astrid being there just in support, but all the way through to the boys that have got the spanners in their hand, D-Russ in the car, and Seppi as your engineer. It was just great to see the thrill they get out of being part of a winning outcome.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. Like we alluded to earlier, that the lows are quite more than the highs, so you've got to savor them. But it's also there as recognition for how hard everyone works to get it where it is. Like for us, we don't run Carrera Cup only. We run Porsche Sprint Challenge in 2 or 3 cars in Porsche Sprint Challenge. We run 3 cars in Toyota 86. We run a Porsche in GT4. So these guys, they don't stop. Like, basically, we raced last weekend in Porsche Sprint Challenge at the Bend in Adelaide. We all got off the plane at about 11 o'clock on Sunday night. Everyone was back here yesterday morning around 8, 9 o'clock in between. I must admit, I wandered in a little bit later. I was a bit stiff and sore. And they're straight into it. They're getting the Carrera Cup car finalised. It's going to do a couple of things at QR on Thursday, just doing a few things with brakes and what have you, with D-Russ there. And then it'll get loaded up, and the truck will leave Friday mid-afternoon to go straight to Darwin. So, there's a lot of time. It's just dedication. You have to love it, and you have to be dedicated. And when you were talking a little bit earlier about when some things go wrong and you blow up, sometimes, like, yourself, I've said it to you, I'm like, how do you think I feel, mate? And you go, I want to be you.
Oh, mate, I'm very happy to be me and you be you, mate, when it comes to those things.
Yeah.
But you've been in business for a long time in commercial fit-outs. You see any similarities between running the business and running a race team?
There is. There's similarities there. Obviously, you're managing staff, you're managing people, you're managing personalities, and everyone's different, as we know. What one person likes, the other one doesn't like. One person can be a humorous person, the other one's a serious person. And then obviously the financial side of things, you're spending a lot of money doing this. And you've got to make the books have got to balance at the end of the year. And if they don't balance, well, at the end of the day, there's no point doing it. Like, people look at it and think, oh, you must be making plenty of money out of this. You don't really, mate. Like, I take my hat off to, like, I have another business. So, yes, that is managed mainly by my other staff, and I'm involved in it from like day to day, every day. But it's also just making sure that the dollars line up. And that's the hard part, because obviously, we all talk about, everything's getting more expensive at the moment and things are going up. And it's the same as us, the same with hotels. It's the same with flights. It's the same with, eating out, feeding everybody, everything like that. It's, you get home some weekends and you look at it and you go, probably spent a little bit more than we should have there. But it's part and parcel, because at the end of the day, you give a driver a budget, and that's X amount of dollars, and you've got to make that work.
Yeah. And look, I mean, motor racing is an expensive hobby for those who are treating it as a hobby or a profession, and running it like a business. And that's why I asked the question: the similarities between running a business and also running a race team. Effectively, they're two in the same in their businesses. One's a complete passion. I don't know what the relationship is with the fit outs business, but I'm sure over all these years it's been something that's been an enjoyable thing for you. But mate, talk to me about the vision for TekworkX now you started. What do you see TekworkX looking like going forward?
It's probably hard to sort of gauge at the present moment where we are this stage of the season. For us, for me, the ultimate is to win Sprint Challenge this year with young fellow. We've got Hamish Fitzsimmons, to win Pro-Am in that with Danny Studdard. He leads the championship at the present moment. And obviously for D-Russ to win a championship in Carrera Cup. I did say on the weekend to my wife, I said, if I won all three of those in 1 year, I said, I reckon I'd just put the queue in the rack. And she goes, you wouldn't be able to help yourself. You keep going. I said, that's right. And I think for us to just continue the way we are, to be a team that can provide young drivers to come from Toyota 86, learn the driving skills and everything that's required. They've got the opportunity, then they can move up the Sprint Challenge, and then it's up to them then whether they want to move on to Carrera Cup or GT4 or wherever it takes them. I see the challenges at the present moment is obviously it's a sponsorship challenge, and that's like with ourselves having Hire a Hubby on board, it's taken the pressure off us as a team in Carrera Cup that we don't need to look for additional money. We have enough money to cover that budget. We have enough money that we can throw the resources at it that's needed. And that is a good thing for us as a team. I find when you look back at it for what happens next year, I'd like to, if I was running 2 cars in Carrera Cup, 2 cars in Sprint Challenge, a couple of cars in GT4 and the same in Toyota 86, I'm happy to do that. I think if you start last year, we ran 3 cars in Carrera Cup, 3 in Sprint Challenge, and we did well. Don't get me wrong. We won races. We had pole positions in Sprint Challenge. I think if my memory serves me correct, I think we won maybe 8 or 9 of the last 12 races. We had pole positions, and the pinnacle, I think, last year for me in Sprint Challenge was the last race of the season. TekworkX finished 1, 2, 3 across the line at Bathurst in the last race of the season, and I just stood there and I just had tears coming out of my eyes, and it almost brings me to a tear now because it just gave me so much excitement to go, all that hard work has actually paid off.
Good for you, mate, because I think for those who risk the most and then get the reward that comes with the effort and the risk, you deserve to be able to celebrate and enjoy the accolades that go with it, mate. So I think that's fantastic. In the here and now, mate, where we had an average start in the Grand Prix, not for anything other than a first corner incident in race 2, which makes it almost impossible to come back from with the way the grids are set up. But in the schemes of coming good after that, to have a pole position, win, second place in Tarpo, second in the championship now, Darwin a couple of weeks away. Certainly the prospects must be looking good, feeling good about it, mate? Or
look, we are, definitely are. And when you sort of talk about AGP being round 1, I probably wasn't that disappointed. And I think I said this to you because the last 2 seasons prior, we've left the Grand Prix leading the championship or been equal leaders in the championship or thereabouts. And for one reason or another, things have gone a little bit south, and then we've picked back up and gone again. And I was a little like, and I was even like Rochelle when she walked in the office after AGP, she goes, "Don't worry, Dad, we'll be right once we go to Taupo." And I didn't expect what happened to Taupo, and I don't think any of the team did. But obviously, we put a hell of a lot of work in, and obviously these tracks, we couldn't test on those tracks, and D-Russ had never been there before, and then we had him, at Focus, which is a simulator place at QR and SMP, and they spent a lot of time with him one afternoon. And Luke, who's Seppi's son, who's an engineer as well, and he's our in-house engineer, he's here full time. A lot of work had been done, but to walk off, and obviously I wasn't at Taupo, and maybe that might be an omen. I might have to stay away from Darwin, or I'll get sent away. But you know, like I would say, like for myself, we haven't been in the previous 2 seasons overly strong at Darwin. We've been quite consistent. You know, like last year we had a driver, Tom, finish in the top 4 in a couple of races and just missed out on a podium for the round, finishing 4th. So it's one of those tracks. It'll throw up some surprises, and with those big long straights, especially down the main straight there, it's just about having the car speed there. The good part we have is we've got D-Russ. He's experienced. I'm not saying he's old. So when he listens to this later on, he's experienced and he knows how to treat a race weekend and how we just chip away. And it's not a matter of, and I've said this to yourself, and you know that too, Brendan, it's not a matter of going and winning every round. It's a matter of walking away from that round with some good points to just consolidate and just keep yourself. If you keep yourself up the pointy end, when it comes to the end of the season, you'll be in with a bigger show than most other drivers or teams.
Yeah. Look, I've seen that in my involvement with the team over the years, Woodsy. And I guess for me, it is nice and refreshing. I mean, I had the good fortune of being there in Taupo when I was talking to Seppi and D-Russ, you know, at different stages throughout the weekend, before and after each session. And we're keeping our partners up to date, as you know. Obviously, we've got a really good support group with all of our partners, and keeping them in the loop is important. But these guys and the preparation they've gone into, doing some little things to prepare tyres, you know, in advance of a wet Saturday, doing things on Friday in advance of Saturday when conditions change. Then knowing that the race weekend was in the bag, as long as we just brought it home in the last race, and just seeing the maturity, I guess, that D-Russ brought to the thinking, and knowing that, it'd be nice to win all 3, but, second is going to be a great outcome. 3rd or 4th would have been a great outcome because you're still top step of the podium for the weekend. And that was ultimately what got delivered. And with 8 different winners in 8 rounds of Carrera Cup racing, you know anyone can be up there any other week. So I understand what you say about consistency.
And it is that, because, like, you can zig or you zag, and every now and again, if you zig when you should have zagged, it'll all go the wrong way for you. And that's motor racing. And so those sort of things are quite important. Obviously, a lot of work gets done here in preparation, and obviously, I spoke earlier about we're going to QR on Thursday to do a few things with the car. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about that on this, in case someone else sees it later on. But we're just going to do a few things that we need to do to prepare the car to make sure it's right. We haven't had the car back very long. It was great to bring the car back with no damage on it or anything like that, because that obviously puts you on the back foot within everything else that we have to do within TekworkX. So that's a good thing. So I think we're looking positive that we'll be strong there, but I never go to the races confident. I can't.
No, mate, I think that just sets you up for what could be a whole bunch of misery, because you just say the zig or the zag can be the undoing, mate. So, well, I'll tell you what, Woodsy, I reckon there's a lot of people here who probably firstly enjoyed the conversation to hear and understand how a passion can turn into almost like a second business. You've probably deterred a lot of wannabe race team owners from going down that path. But for anyone who's in the Hubby world and looking in, listening in, we obviously like to invite all of our franchisees along to these events, and certainly any of our prospects that are thinking about joining Hubby and seeing the sort of fun that we do have. Mate, thanks for taking time out to share your story. It's an inspiring one for those, particularly people like myself who love the racing and others like us. So, mate, congratulations on what you've achieved so far. Let's kick some butt in Darwin and for the rest of the season, mate. I look forward to seeing you up there.
I look forward to it, mate. Appreciate you having me.
Good on you, mate. Cheers, Woodsy.
Yeah, mate. Thank you.
Don't forget to click below and subscribe to the Hubby TekworkX Carrera Cup channel.